Thank you. Hello, my name is Nate. I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ who struggles with an addiction to drugs and alcohol.
Hi, Nate.
Hey, my people. All right. I grew up fairly well adjusted in a pastor's home in South Minneapolis. Unlike most of the people I grew up with, my folks were still in a loving marriage. I have 3 brothers, none of which were any kind of serious troublemakers. And we sat in the front row of church during sermons next to my mother whenever she was not singing in the choir. My father was an important person, and thus, I felt like an important person. At the age of 10, my father felt called to leave the church we were in and serve the Lord elsewhere. This led to him accepting a position in Barnes, Wisconsin. While this town was only a 3-hour drive from where I had grown up, it might as well have stepped into another world. Downtown Barnes consisted of a building with a convenience store, a restaurant, and a bar. You knew it was downtown because it had a big sign out front that said, downtown. My 5th grade class in Minneapolis had a higher population than the entire town did. I felt isolated. I acted, spoke, and was treated differently. I tried to adapt, but what started to happen is while I tried to put on a good face, my body started to break down. I was missing school quite a bit due to stomach aches. My mood started going sour and depression started to set in. Looking back at all of this, it was obvious to recognize what was going on, but at the time people didn't talk much about panic attacks and depression. And besides, I was 10. What kind of mental health issues could a 10-year-old have anyways? Over the next couple of years, I developed some fairly basic coping skills. I started getting defensive. I didn't let people in. I tried to hide pain and anger behind humor. Until that is, I discovered that if I misbehaved, I got noticed. It started out little as it always does, but it doesn't stay little when you have the kind of mental health issues I have. It didn't come out until years later that I have a borderline personality disorder. A milder form of it, which is a blessing, but I have it nonetheless. A borderline personality disorder causes a person's brains to exaggerate the input it receives. At my current stage of life, I have come to be able to control the impulses associated with this disorder through the medications I take for my clinical depression and the mental exercises I use to filter my thoughts and emotions. However, when I was just getting into junior high, I didn't even know this was an issue, much less how to deal with it, so it ran amok in my psyche. People would pay attention if I threw a spitball across the room. Why not throw my desk out the window? That all being said, being the untreated, mentally ill, early teenage boy that I was, having people give you kudos for being naughty once in a while was not enough to counteract the debilitating lows that came more and more frequently. It was at that time I started with alcohol to ease some of the tension in my brain. It made me feel good. When I was drunk, I was king of the world. At least until I woke up the next morning. Eventually I was turned on to drugs, which I liked more because I could hide pills and dope easier. Not to mention what a person could do with household chemicals. At this point, I could go through all my war stories and list the bad things that I did, but really, it doesn't matter. The Bible does a good job of summing up my lifestyle this way. Galatians 5:19-21 says, "The acts of the sinful nature are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you as I did before that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God." It was simple. I was a sinner. One of the first times I hit bottom, and I say one of the first times because I hit it more than once, I had slit my wrists open with a steak knife and lost enough blood that the doctor said I should not be alive. I spent some time in the acute mental ward of Millard Want Medical Center. It was here that I found out just how screwed up I was, and the doctors and counselors started to explain what was happening, why it was happening, and what drugs to take for it. It was not the diagnosis, however, that made the largest impact on my life. It was during one of the many downtime moments that one of the psychiatrists sat next to me and asked if I would be willing to do some brain teasers. I had nothing else to do, so I said sure. What I was not aware of was that the doctor was actually administering an IQ test. The test was done, or after the test was done, he paused and looked at me and said, "You are a waste." I was thinking, wow, buddy, you should write for Hallmark. That was beautiful. But he continued with, "You are the smartest person in this room right now. If you don't go to college, if you don't make something of yourself, you are a waste." Now that stuck with me. Because for the first time in my life, I could remember I had somebody with no stake in my life, or me at all, tell me that I had real value. My parents were very open with affection toward me. I grew up hearing over and over that they loved me, but hey, they're my parents. They're supposed to do that. This guy had no reason to say that outside of declaring something he saw to be true. Now this didn't fix me. The first thing I did when I got out of there was to go get high. But it made an impact. It planted a seed. And so over the next couple of years, I started using some of the tools I picked up at Millard One. And they did actually help some, but I was still mixing in my own form of therapy. It wasn't until a series of people started making a spiritual impact in my life that I really started to make a change. My girlfriend, now wife, had become a follower of Christ. She wanted to make sure I was saved as well. I wasn't so sure. We finally reached an agreement. She could ask, "How are you doing with the whole God thing?" I would say no, and that would end the conversation. Then I just started to work at GE Railcar Repair in Superior, Wisconsin, fixing railroad cars. It was there I met Ted. Ted was a holy roller and then some, and he was unapologetic to boot. Occasionally I would find myself down inside a grain car with Ted, who would sing hymns while he worked, loudly and off-key. And after what seemed like a constant barrage of God, I wore down. I decided I would make a deal with God. I said, "Okay, God, I will give you one more chance. Don't screw it up." The thing is, though, he honored it. He started to work in my life, and I started to make real changes. I stopped getting drunk whenever I could. I started going to church. I even got involved in church. And through the grace of God, I was able to get my life going in the direction it was meant to be going. Of course, at that point, everything got easy. Flowers would rain from the heavens wherever I walked, and I would wake to angels singing. Okay, maybe not. Truth be told, I think in a lot of ways my life actually got harder. I never liked when people say, "I found Jesus and now I'm happy all the time." Those people are either liars or fools, or at best, just plain not paying attention. I lost friends that I had had for years. I had to give up my ways of coping that I'd had since I was a kid. I actually had to face my problems head on. The good part, however, is that for the first time in my life, I wasn't going it alone. I'm not talking about my wife either. I love her, no question, but she can't save me from myself. And for all the time we spend together, she will never be able to get inside my head completely. And frankly, I don't think she wants to. That's a scary place, I know, I've been. No, instead I'm talking about the one who saved me in the first place. Jesus said nothing can separate us from his love, meaning he is always there, he is always watching. He created us and knows us to the number of hairs on our head, and he is the only one who can search me and know me. I can't hide anything from him. There's no point in even trying. He knows my thoughts, he knows them better than I do, and he knows them before I do. I never have to put on my best face or try not to offend. There's no rituals or customs I have to adhere to. I get to just be me, really me. Over the last 12 years or so, I've had a multitude of things go wrong in my life. What seemed to start things off was the miscarriage of my first child. My wife has what is called a bicoordinate uterus. Basically, that just means that she has a uterus that's not shaped the way it's supposed to be. It causes her to not be able to carry a baby the way that most women can. When we got pregnant the second time, my daughter was breech. Her feet pointed down the entire time. Combined that with premature labor and what was meant to be one of the happiest times in our lives turned into one of the scariest. I could have lost them both very easily. And then to make things worse, a week before my daughter was born, I was injured at work. I incurred an annular strain in 2 of the discs in my low back. I was now out of work with a family on the way, if they survived. I had planned on doing a manual job for my whole life. Now I had a weight restriction at 10 pounds and I couldn't lean forward for more than a few minutes at a time. It took about a year before I was finally able to find work in retail, and I did well. I moved into sales and actually started making decent money, and I was miserable. I started having panic attacks on my way to work. My depression became very intense. My marriage was suffering because of it. And one day I decided I have to get out. I quit that day. Once again, I was out of work. I tried a few different things that filled the void somewhat, but somehow, through no result of my own, I kept having to find new work. So I took a different route. I began a discussion with my pastor. I was to begin a path on vocational ministry as a youth pastor. I was to complete an internship and begin work on a degree in theology. This time I was doing God's work, so I knew it couldn't fail. Or so I thought. 1 week into the internship, I started getting this unsettled movement in my leg that quickly moved into my entire body. I went into the emergency room and the doctor gave me a strange look and offered me his highly trained medical opinion. I don't know. After multiple specialists, countless pokes and prods, it was determined that the movements I was experiencing could at least be given some sort of label. Proximal dystonic chorea orthotosis. My daughter just calls it the wiggles. A movement disorder that mimics Parkinson's. They have no idea what caused it, what they can do to treat it, or how long I will have it. Initially, it was constant, severe, and debilitating. I would have times that looked much like I was having a seizure on the floor, unable to speak, vomiting, and in a whole lot of pain. Not only was I now out of work again, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to live a normal life at all. My body was shaking so bad I had to take motion sickness pills. That was years ago, and I still can't find work full time. This is always some sort of movement going on in my body that is uncontrolled. Sometimes it can be seen, sometimes it is deep muscle movement that is only noticed by someone else if they touch me. My symptoms have gone down some since their initial onset, but I still have no idea from one moment to the next what my body is going to do. The 23rd Psalm says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." It is in these last few years that I've been able to understand and be able to see that verse for what it really is. It means I don't have to give up. I'm able to go on because God is with me. Everything I go through, I can give to him. Does he take it all away? Not always, but he takes enough. He gives us places like our home churches, small groups, and Celebrate Recovery. He gives us the tools, we just have to use them. Because I have been given the chance to share my burdens, because I took that chance, I know what it means when the psalmist said, "He restores my soul." A perfect example of that goes back to what I had mentioned earlier about going through a miscarriage with my wife. After we got back from the hospital, a good friend, whom my wife and I had known through church and had grown to love and cherish, showed up at our door. She didn't call first, I'm sure because we would have told her not to worry about it, that we'd be okay, didn't need anything. She was carrying a basket filled with everything she needed to make a soup. She let us just be for a while and went about the business of making us a simple meal. She didn't try to fix us. She didn't try to explain it away or cheer us up. We cried and she let us. She showed us in a very intimate and tangible way what it means to be loved by God. This kind of expression of love cannot come from a stranger. Not just because I don't let strangers come into my kitchen and start cooking, but rather this kind of expression of caring only comes through relationship. Relationship fostered through the community that is found in your church, small groups, and through Celebrate Recovery. In these places, I have seen lives change. I have seen my own life change. I am no longer centered on the denial of reality and the attempted escape from my past. Today, I have been clean and sober for over 7 years. Beginning with step one, by stepping out of denial, I walk in the freedom of knowing that I am not the one who is in charge. It is because I have handed that control over to God, I can rely on his plan, his perfect plan that uses the mistakes of my past and turns them around for good. It is through suffering I have grown and can empathize with the burdens of others and been able to shout for joy in the celebrations of the victories I am able to witness in the lives of my forever family. And God's grace has continued on into the 12th step. He has given me the chance to share this good news that comes with living a life sold out for Christ. I have enjoyed the privilege of becoming a sponsor. Being asked to walk alongside someone else in the recovery is a humbling experience. Recovery is not easy, and being invited into a person's life during this time is an honor. I know from experience what it is to have someone you can turn to, someone you can call at 3 a.m. and know they will not hit ignore on their phone. Someone with whom you can share your deepest hurts and ugliest scars and know they will love you, warts and all. A responsibility I certainly never would have trusted myself with in the past. Also, I've been serving as part of the leadership team for CR now for almost 6 years. My position as the assimilation coach has given me the opportunity to visit treatment centers in the community, share my testimony in community workshops, church services, and encourage hundreds of people that I would have never had the opportunity to reach otherwise. Last fall, I was given the awesome opportunity of becoming one of the Minnesota state reps for Celebrate Recovery, increasing my circle of influence even greater. Most recently this year, I came on staff at Anchor Point Community Church as counseling and recovery intern. I've been given the opportunity to begin a recovery ministry within my home church. When the devil got excited that I got taken out of my position at Anchor Point the first time, God gave me a new position that is far better suited to me, and I have seen more people come into a relationship with Christ than I could ever have imagined before. I used to trash parties. Now my goal is to storm the gates of hell and trash the place. When someone questions me as to whether or not recovery is worth it, I can answer with this. My being here in this place tonight makes me a better person than I was before I came. A better husband, a better father, and a better friend. And while God has not chosen at this time to heal my body, He has healed my heart, which is a gift far greater. My body is temporary, but my spirit is eternal. And I can't change what I was before, but by the grace offered to me by God, I am a new creation today. Amen. Always growing, always changing, and always moving forward in the direction of the one who walks beside me. I don't know what tomorrow will bring or if I will even see tomorrow. But I know that the heart that hungers after the will of God will be led by the will of God. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." And it is the redeeming power of Jesus Christ that allows me to say, I believe that to be true. Thank you for letting me share.